and welcome to this talk on the Genomic Sciences STP, everyone. I'm Kate Smith. I work for the Manchester Academy for Healthcare Scientist Education. I'll introduce the speakers we've got today. So first we've got Rona McLeod, who is the genetic counselling pathway lead. We've got Sarabi, who works on the genomics pathway, and Nick, who works a bit on the genomics pathway and a bit on cancer genomics. Because we've only got a few people here today, it will be really good if we can have some interactivity. If you've got any questions at all, please feel free to put them in the chat or ask them. Just to warn you, it is being recorded, so if you don't want to appear on camera, then please feel free to put questions in the chat rather than speaking or being on your video. So Rona, I'll hand over to you.
Okay, lovely. So we have got a small slide presentation just to give you an overview of the course. It would be lovely to kind of meet you a little bit. If you felt it was okay to put your camera on just for the first few minutes, that would be great. Because we can perhaps tailor this a little bit more to what questions you have, or to find out a little bit about what pathway even you're thinking about. It may be you're thinking of more than one pathway, deciding between genomics or cancer genomics. It may be that you've already been accepted onto one of the programs. We'd just be interested to hear a little bit about where you're up to. If there's a problem with connection or you don't want to put your camera on, feel free to put in the chat what pathway you're thinking of at the moment. I'll give you a moment or two just in case anybody wants to write something in the chat. And it may be that some of you have just been to the Northwest Genomics Laboratory lab tour and heard about this for the first time, so maybe not sure what to expect. Okay. Thank you, Nadia. Hi, everyone. Not able to put my camera on, unfortunately, but I'm very interested in the STP program for genomics and also bioinformatics. Fantastic. Emily, I can maybe put camera on later, but people around me at the moment, that's totally understandable, Emily. I'm interested in applying for genomics, so interested in hearing more about the Manchester program. That's fabulous. And we've also got a man on the call as well. Man, I don't know if you feel able to tell me what course you're thinking of doing.
Hello. Yeah, so I recently attended the Northwest, was it the genetics session on Monday or Tuesday?
Oh yes, fantastic. That was the lab tour.
So yeah, that was obviously, it's a virtual one where they went through the lab and what they do. So I just wanted to get more insight into the genomics aspect of the STP courses available.
Yes, okay, that's brilliant. So it's great that we've got Nick, the clinical scientist, with us, and it's great that we've got Sarabi, who's working on the genomics pathway, because it sounds that's the key interest. I'm going to do just a quick overview and then give you time to actually speak to Sarabi and Nick when they're on the call. But are there any particular burning questions or anything that you hope to get out of today joining the call this morning to make sure we try and cover it? Again, just put in the chat if there's anything you would particularly like us to touch on. I'll maybe come back to that at the end then. Have a think if there's any particular questions you might have. What I'll maybe do now is share the screen and just give you an overview of the programme, just so that you have a little bit more of an understanding about the programme itself. Let's just see if I can get this up. Can you now see this? Can everybody see that?
Yeah, we can see that, yeah.
Brilliant. Sorry, it's a little bit slow. So this is the MSc Clinical Science Genomic Sciences. And the reason I was asking you about your interest is you probably know from looking at the application process that there are 3 pathways to it. There's genomic counselling, which is very patient focused. although they all have patients at the heart of what we do. There's a genomics pathway, and that's the pathway lead for that's Helen Stewart, and cancer genomics pathway, and the lead for that's Paul Shore. And we've got Sarabi, who's lecturer in genomics, who's helping cover for Emma Jenkinson, who's a mat leave. And as I say, Nick Hickson works on the genomics pathway and across cancer genomics. So just to say that the STP training pathway is a nationally commissioned training, and there are two very key aspects to this. One is the academic side, which is what the University of Manchester offers, and the other side is the work-based competencies that are assessed at your genomic medicine service where you're going to be based. And the clinical training involves a range of assessments such as direct observation of practice, case-based discussion, observed clinical events, and there are competencies to kind of achieve as a portfolio that people work through over the 3 years of the training. And there's a huge amount of support to help you and support you through that process with your local training officers. So we work very closely with training officers as well. However, the focus for our aspect of your training is very much the academic component, which leads to the MSc final examination. That means that you will have passed all the taught components of the course, because there are 120 credits worth of academic learning, and there's also a research dissertation which is 60 credits. So at the end of that, completing your MSc, completing the final assessment from the work-based training is what gives you your registration as a clinical scientist. So that's just a sort of broad-based overview of the programme. So we've mentioned about the credits. I would say that the programme itself is very blended learning. You'll be doing some online learning. You'll be doing some face-to-face with us here in Manchester. And it's quite innovative, the training. I think most of the students find there's lots of elements that they really find interesting, surprising from the way you maybe have been taught previously in other degree courses. So for example, you might be taking part in mock MDTs, multidisciplinary team discussions. You might be doing hands-on variant analysis. There'll be bioinformatics workshops, and you'll be working with other pathways as well as doing some pathway-specific teaching. So this is just an overview of the overall structure for the STP programme. You'll see in the programme that the specialism training really is concentrated in years 2 and years 3, and in year 1 you do some foundation training with other STP programs. There are 2 30-credit modules which are broken down into units that support your clinical rotations. In year 1, there's the Introduction to Healthcare Science and Professional Practice, which is a 20-credit unit, and that includes a range of things that we feel is important to be a professional clinical scientist. There's some leadership training, there's some communication skills training. It's really very broad-based across the scientists, looking at screening programs and things that are really topical, as well as profession-based learning. You also do 10 credits worth of bioinformatics in that part of the module. The other module is comprised of 3 nominal 10-credit units, and we'll come on and say how that works for the different pathways. And then you have your specialism modules in years 2 and years 3. We also put in some research methods training, and that's to help support the research dissertation that we work very closely with. So when you're doing your research dissertation, you will have a local-based research supervisor, but you'll also have a research academic supervisor here to help support you through that, as well as an academic advisor. Sometimes your academic advisor is also your research supervisor, but it doesn't follow. So the key thing is that there is a lot of support to support you through your academic learning and to complete your research. Okay, so this is just an overview of the genomics pathway, and you'll see here that again it's the common year 1. You do 3 3 units, which are genetics, genomic counselling, cancer genomics. And then you have in your year 2 prenatal genomics and pediatric genomics, which are 2 15-credit units. And then in year 3, you've got the adult genetics and genomic disorders and the genomics of sporadic cancer. Nick and Sarabi, I don't know if you want to say a little bit more about any of these units, given that there's a keen interest in the genomics pathway amongst the trainees.
So I can just say that with regards to the prenatal and the pediatric, most of it is done. Basically, if you apply to the Manchester Northwest Genomics Laboratory Hub for an STP position, we are going to have 2 genomics positions available from October, and 1 cancer genomics and 2 bioinformatics positions. So if you're based in Manchester, you might still have to do some of your training in the Liverpool lab, because the Liverpool lab is part of our genomics laboratory hub. So you might be doing some of your work-based training across both labs. Expenses are covered for any travel that might be needed, but that might just be like a month of the year. And also in the 3rd year, again, specifically for the genomics of sporadic cancer module, the work-based part of it, some of it could be in Liverpool if you're based in the Manchester lab. But for genomics specifically, we have 2 positions, and one will be the initial base will be in Manchester, and for the other position, the main base will be in Liverpool. But for the 2 bioinformatics positions and the cancer genomics, they will all be based in the Manchester lab.
Nick, thank you. That's great. So just to be clear, that's focusing very much on the work-based learning, and I think it's useful to know what positions we have in the Northwest. That's terrific. So Rabi, I don't know if you want to say anything about the academic content of these specialism modules.
I'll answer if they have questions at the end, I think. No.
Okay, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I think the key thing is that it's a really broad-based learning you get, and we can say a little bit more when we at the end if you've got any questions about any of this. For cancer genomics, you will see that actually it's this is genomic counselling now we're coming on to. You'll see again that in year 1, we have 3 units that you rotate into. There's genetics, genomic counselling, and from 2022, genomics in the mainstream. And that's really to reflect how there's a huge mainstreaming agenda. You probably may have heard about the new genetic test directory, and more healthcare professionals are able to offer genomic tests. And I think we're doing more multidisciplinary working, which is really exciting as well as quite challenging. And we wanted that to be reflected in the education and preparation for the academic teaching. So in years 2 and 3, we have counselling and communication skills for genetic counsellors. And we have within that additional lecturers, including psychologists and therapists. We have applied genetics and genomics as a second specialism module. In year 3, we do advanced genomic counselling and ethical practice, and then genomics and bioinformatics in advanced clinical care. So we're really looking at transferable skills from the bioinformatics and the genomics that you've been doing in year 1, and looking at how that translates, for example, in working with our colleagues and thinking about MDTs, thinking about variant analysis, and how this is communicated to the patients and families, as well as supporting them following a genetic diagnosis and result. And here you can see that for the cancer genomics pathway, we have a 20-credit unit in year 1, which is Introduction to Cancer Genomics. They also do a 10-credit rotation in genetics. And you'll see the focus of the specialism in years 2 and years 3. They do hematological malignancies 1, solid tumours 1, and then in year 3, hematological malignancies 2 and solid tumours 2. So what do we offer in Manchester for the STP training? It's important to say that every single pathway as we mentioned before, is very patient-centered. Patients are at the heart of why we're doing what we do. And we do involve patients in our teaching, and we have lay representatives for each of the pathways, and you'll meet them at the open day when you start from year 1. We involve case-based learning, so our teaching is grounded in actual real-life case examples and how theory maps onto practice. We use very much a scaffold approach to learning. There's some online self-assessment and quizzes, building up to some of the written assignments. And we also do webinars to support the block teaching and to help with sort of peer-to-peer group experience. So as I mentioned before, it's blended delivery. There's many different types of ways that we deliver the curriculum. And we hope that it actually helps to support you back at base, that there is some online teaching you can do when you're working within your own department, as well as when you come to Manchester. So just to say, the teaching is very much block teaching. Usually when you're doing a module, you will be in Manchester for a week and you will get these dates in advance. In year 1, the teaching is actually very front loaded. So you'll notice in semester 1, from October to January, you are in Manchester really in quite a condensed way. And the reason for that is that the academic modules really support the work-based learning. And also it is perhaps a good use of being able to focus on your academic work for a period of time before you go back to your own department. And the exams tend to be in the January for most of the modules that take place in semester 1. The units tend to be 1-hour MCQ exams, and there are also some written assignments during the modules. In years 2, you'll see that for genomics, there are 2 times that you'll be coming to Manchester, and same again in year 3, that it's more spread out in semester 1 and semester 2. And you'll see for genomic counselling, the timeline is very similar. And you'll see that submission of your research dissertation is in the April of the 3rd year. Cancer genomics as well, you'll see again, very similar. The timelines really are very similar. If you want to have a look in more detail at the modules and the content, I'd highly recommend you look at this link, which is the National School of Healthcare Sciences. It's their curriculum library, and you can look up for the year that you're applying for. So you can look for 2022, and that is the updated curriculum. You may be aware that the curriculum was recently reviewed, and so the new curriculum will be launched in the new revised curriculum. It's not completely new, it's a revision, will be launched in September of this year. Just to say, our key contacts, we're very approachable, and we do encourage you to email us if you want to set up a meeting, or you want to speak to us, or if you're having any difficulties at all. We really want to hear from students, so we hope that students, if they're having any difficulties or any problems meeting deadlines for assignments or whatever, that they let us know as soon as possible. So we would really encourage you to keep in touch. Sorry, I'm working at the hospital today, so they haven't put off the phone. These are some useful links for you. We've got the British Society for Genomic Medicine, the Association for Genetic Nurses and Counsellors, and the Association for Clinical Genomic Science, and the Cancer Genetics Group. These are all professional groups that you may want to look at the website and find out a little bit what's happening, find out a little bit about what events have been organised and what meetings are coming up. And so we'll make these slides readily available so you can look into these in your own time. I just wanted to mention that there is a course, a future learn course on what is genetic counselling. And I don't think necessarily that is just for genetic counsellors. I think it can be useful for us all to understand what each other does. So if you are interested in wanting to understand the link between what happens in the clinical laboratory and what happens in clinical practice, and believe me, many of the conversations we have with our patients, they are curious to meet the scientists, to know what happens with their DNA samples. So I would encourage you to think about looking at that as well. and our Northwest Laboratory Hub website. The open day sadly was a Monday, but I think some of you have actually visited that open day, so hopefully you got to see that. So that was just a very quick stop tour of the course. Let's just stop sharing and bring you all back in. We've got a few questions. What's the learning teaching style like? That's from Nadia. So the teaching style, I would have to say, is very varied. There will be some lectures, which are the more sort of traditional type lectures. There will be some very much interactive small group workshops. There will be all sorts of simulated learning as well. So it's very, very variable, from case discussions to, yes, it's very, very varied. I think I missed a bit of what Nicholas said in a busy lab. Were you saying that of the 2 genomics trainees, one would do their work-based learning in Liverpool? How would that be decided? Nick, do you want to answer that question? That's from Emily.
Yeah. So for the genomics trainees, we'll have 2 positions, as I said, but one of them will be mostly based in Manchester, and one will be mostly based in Liverpool. And I think you'll have the option to indicate whether you have a preference as to whether you want to be in Liverpool or Manchester based when you're doing your application. And it can also be discussed later during the interviews as well, during the interview stage.
Thank you. There's a question in the chat from Emily about what is work-life balance like, and I think it's really important to say, one of the things to say is there's no question it is a challenging course. It's incredibly enjoyable, it's incredibly stimulating. It's you know, I think you'll find it brings the academic learning to life, you know, and if you're, you know, it sounds like you're all interested in genomics. If you've got a passion for science, you've got a passion for working with patients, there's no question that these are really exciting courses. Can you do courses in parallel? I would say no. I think this is a full-time commitment, really. It's because it's your professional training as well as yes, as well as doing a master's. It's not like a top master's by research or a top master's on its own. It really is, yeah, a full-time commitment, I would say. And we do really encourage a work-life balance. You know, it's really important. And we do workshops in terms of helping people to manage some of the challenges there can be of having both work-based learning as well as academic learning going on simultaneously. So it's very exciting, but there's lots of ways we'll try and support you with that. Sorry.
Can I just ask about the PhD? Is this close to completion, or are you like in your the end of your 3rd year, in your 2nd year? It's to Emily.
Emily, you might need to mute.
You might be on mute, yeah.
Oh, there we are. Her funding runs out in June, so she's hoping to submit in June.
Yeah, in which case I don't think it's an issue at all, because we have had several people before who have been in that position exactly, and then maybe they have their Viva a couple of months after they've started on the STP training. So I don't think that would be an issue at all.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, Nick, I was just about to go. I suddenly realised that, yeah, the Viva might be. Okay. Any other questions?